I have talked about the famous poets of the Romantic era, and as we know now that the major or the dominant form of the Romantic era was poetry. But in my previous video, I told you that a new form of writing was emerging in the late 17th century and the early 18th century, and that was the rise of novel. Through my previous videos, you must have understood that there were two kinds of novels that were being written. One was the sentimental novel, and the second type was the Gothic novel. But besides that, another form of novel writing was gaining momentum or becoming popular, and that was the rise of the historical novels. And the most important writer in this category was Walter Scott. Walter Scott wrote his novels on the stories which had historical basis. One of his most important work is Ivanhoe, written in 1820. Some of the characters are invented while the others really existed, and Scott's description of people and the time, the society and places in his novels is always very detailed and very descriptive. His first major work is Minstrelsy of the Scottish Border, which is a collection of ballads, and from the collection came out his first long poem called The Lay of the Last Minstrel in 1805. His other romance in verse is The Lady of the Lake in 1810. As far as his novels are concerned, Scott is remembered as the father of historical novels. His first novel is Waverley 1814. His other lesser famous novels are Guy Mannering and Heart of Midlothian. Besides the historical novels that became popular during this time, another kind of novels were also being written, and they were called the novels of manners. Now, why were they called as the novel of manners is because they depicted the upper middle class of England during this time, and their themes were set in everyday life of the upper middle class people or the British landed gentry or the people in Britain who owned lands and estates during the 18th century. The main themes in this type of novel are usually marriage and love, friendship and class hierarchy, etc. For example, Jane Austen is particularly associated with such novels which comment upon the social class in Britain at the end of 18th century. Her novels mostly depict the dependence of women on marriage for a secure future for themselves and for a respectable social standing and economic security that a marriage could bring to them. Some of the major works or major novels by Jane Austen are Sense and Sensibility 1811, Pride and Prejudice 1813, Mansfield Park 1814, Emma 1815, Northanger Abbey 1818 and Persuasion 1818. So all in all, Jane Austen wrote 6 novels, and out of these 6 novels, Northanger Abbey and Persuasion were published posthumously, that is after the author's death. In her novel Sense and Sensibility, we see the story of Dashwood sisters, Eleanor Dashwood and Marianne Dashwood, and their journey of love, heartbreak and social expectations. In Pride and Prejudice, the story revolves around Mr. and Mrs. Bennet and their 5 daughters, Jane, Elizabeth, Mary, Kitty and Lydia Bennet. There is a famous character of Mr. Darcy in this novel and his love match with the eldest daughter, Elizabeth Bennet. The themes are same, that is of love, social class and marriage. Then we have Mansfield Park, which has Fanny Price as the central character, who is in love with Edmund Bertram. In the novel Emma, the plot revolves around the central character, the young woman Emma Woodhouse, who loves matchmaking and in the course of matchmaking herself learns about love, friendship and self-awareness. She is contrasted opposite to Mr. Knightley, her love interest. Then we have a novel by Jane Austen called Northanger Abbey. Northanger Abbey is a novel with a Gothic theme where the central character is Catherine Morland, who is in love with Henry Tilney. The novel is considered to be a satire on the Gothic fiction and excessive use of supernatural elements. So instead of creating a horrific scene like the Gothic fiction novels used to have, Austen has in her novel made a mockery of the excessive use of Gothic elements through her novel. Lastly, in her novel Persuasion, we see the heroine Anne Elliot reuniting with her love Captain Wentworth and rekindles her past love or past relationship with him. This novel also explores the themes of love, social class, etc. Some of the unfinished novels by Jane Austen are Lady Susan, the Watsons and Sedition. All these works remained unfinished during her lifetime. Now let us look at the prose writings, other kind of prose writings that were being done during this time period. There were many magazines or periodicals that came into publication during this time period. Some of the famous magazines were Edinburgh Review, which was established in 1802. After that, Quarterly then came to more famous magazines, namely Blackwood's Edinburgh magazine, which was launched in 1817, and another one was the London magazine, which saw the contributions by famous writers like Charles Lamb, William Hazlitt, Thomas de Quincey. Another important periodical of the same period was Fraser's, which was founded in 1830s. Thomas de Quincey is best remembered for the prose writings, which is also an autobiographical piece in nature which he wrote, known as Confessions of an English Opium Eater. Quincey regularly wrote for the London magazine. Charles Lamb is another poet as well as a writer who is famously known for his prose writings, especially for his essays titled Essays of Elia. Lamb was perfect in creating humor as well as pathos, that is humor and pain. In his essays and all his other essays in this collection, he has these two elements present in them. He also wrote tales from Shakespeare in collaboration with his sister Mary. William Hazlitt is another prominent prose writer of the age, and he is also known to have written various essays like the characters of Shakespeare's plays, the English poets, the English comic writers, and the dramatic literature of the age of Elizabeth. He has been famously called as the critic's critic. So that was all about the Romantic Age. In this age, we understood that the major or the dominant genre of writing was poetry, and we also saw the rise of magazines during this time period. There were also a rise of two kinds of novels. One is the historical novel popularized by Walter Scott, and the other was the novels of manners, which has Jane Austen as the major writer or novelist. Besides that, we saw that Romantic Age was heavily dominated by many poets who rejected the poetic standards being followed in the previous age, that is the Neoclassical Age or the Augustan Age, where emphasis was given to precision and perfection, reason and intellect. The poets in the Romantic period gave emphasis to humanism. They focused more on emotions and feelings rather than focusing on reason and intellect. The poetry of the Romantic period is divided among 6 major poets. These poets are the early Romantic poets or the early generation, which includes William Blake, William Wordsworth and S.T. Coleridge. The next 3 poets belonging to the second generation of the Romantics included poets like Byron, Shelley and Keats. Besides these 6 poets, we also got to know about other poets who were popular during this period, and they were poets like Robert Southey, Thomas de Quincey, Charles Lamb and William Hazlitt. So that was all about the Romantic Age. The next we will move towards the Victorian Age in the next section of my course.